The morning snow. I am going through a terrible family situation right now, including a separation and probable divorce. I really don't know how to cope and what actions to take myself. The background is that I have been married for 20 years, with 3 children. The last 7 or 8 years have been very rough for us financially and also with arguing about parenting, but things have really come to a head the last 2 years. There have also been some great times, so I'm very torn up about this. We were previously separated for a few months 2 years ago, with my wife taking the children to my in-laws, earlier last year for a couple of months, when I lived in an apartment short-term, and now again for a few months, but this time with more serious legal proceedings. A core issue is that my children have been completely out of control with no discipline. The 2 oldest have refused to go to school and physically attacked me when I tried to force the issue. The oldest went in high school and the second in middle school. My wife has never let me discipline them, yelling at me anytime I've tried to. We've tried therapy of many sorts, but she has never engaged in it openly, always blaming me for every problem, and insisting that I do more and more things to allow me to cope with the situation. I have done everything possible, including talk therapy, psychiatric medication, and meditation, all at her insistence, and without reciprocal efforts. She eventually escalated to calling the police every time there was an argument in the house and getting a protective order to initiate the most recent separation. I have never laid a finger on anyone in the house. My lawyer said it would be impossible to fight the PFA given that no judge wants to take the responsibility to deny one. We wound up with a plea that the temporary order would be extended a whole year and could be expunged from my record eventually. Despite the issues with the children, I have remained close to them and had visited them daily in the previous separations. My wife is now trying to keep them from me in a very controlling way. She included them on the PFA, except the oldest, who is now 18. She is trying to insist on not allowing me to see them unless it is with my mother, who is 70 years old, works full-time, and lives hours away. I am now actually living with my parents for the most part and working remotely, otherwise staying at hotels when I need to come back to town. I filed a custody case and the judge recognized my right to visits, but in court my wife is still trying to fight against each and every hour I get to spend with them with every maneuver possible. At the same time, she has no shame in asking my mother to take the kids for all of their school breaks for several days at a time, when she knows I'll be with them. It's all about control and winning right now for her. Despite all of this swirling around and her expressed desire for a divorce, she has not filed one. I suspect she won't for a while because she only has a very low-paying part-time job and would never be able to afford her lifestyle without nearly 100% of my salary and my health insurance coverage, both of which she currently has. My salary is fairly modest and she was already overspending our means significantly, ringing up substantial debt. Child support and modest alimony wouldn't be nearly as good of a deal as she has now under the PFA. She has a college degree and holds a good job right at the beginning of our marriage, but after losing that she never returned to working, even well after the youngest started school. I am not sure what to do at this point about filing for divorce myself. Everything about this is so exhausting. Her behavior and posturing in court with the PFA and custody case give every indication that a divorce will be contentious and protracted with all sorts of drama. This all has become very expensive with respect to the lawyers, especially with the PFA in place forbidding any mediation. Part of me wants to wait her out and let some things unfold before I file. There are already indications that her poor parenting is being exposed. County agencies are involved. I also secretly hope that if she bottoms out, she will come to her senses and seek a reconciliation with a truly open heart. However, maybe the divorce filing is a better way to force these issues, while also protecting myself from the financial train wreck she has become, and sooner rather than later. I guess I'll try to take this one step at a time. I also have to deal with a job change that will put me in another state, slightly farther from my family compared to where I am now with my parents. I work in a very specialized field that makes such relocations necessary. I will be doing a lot of driving just to see my kids for a few hours every other weekend, but it will be worth it. I didn't include many of the details of the insanity in the family in the post for the sake of the privacy of the kids, but things are going from bad to worse. The PFA action really sets me back on my heels a bit, but I recently met another guy in the same circumstance who was just given full custody of his daughter after things finally broke down for the mother. In time I think the tide will turn, but watching all this dysfunction right now is heartbreaking. I really need to embrace patience as much as I can. My biggest regret now is not having taken a firmer stand 2 years ago when all this crap started. I allowed myself to be emotionally beaten down and blamed for all these problems for too long. To anyone else out there, if you are not violent, but your wife starts calling the police on you to shut you up and win arguments, don't stand for it. My story is where it will lead. Now I have a more concrete question. What do all of you think about dating in my situation? Being shut off completely from my wife with the PFA, I have a strong desire for female companionship, and not just physically. As I mentioned before, I still have a deep desire for reconciliation. But that would only happen if my wife were to actually become apologetic, which she has never shown herself capable of being. Besides, even if we did reconcile, I'd feel like an affair would hold a fraction of the weight of the crap she's pulled on me. She has had me removed from my home in front of my children by men and has since been playing power and control games with my access to my kids. Be that as it may, this divorce is probably going to take forever and I'm doubting I want to wait that long. So, my question is really what sort of situation I should look for in my next relationship given these realities. I'm 44 and still look and feel relatively young. I'm usually not interested in women more than 7 or 8 years younger than me, could also go a few years older. Should I find someone interested in a low level of commitment, or should I embrace an emotional connection? Should I avoid women with kids, or at least those with kids in the house? Should I embrace or avoid other divorced people? I feel like I can't take any more drama in my life, but I also want to find someone I can relate to. All 3 girls take meds to fall asleep. The oldest daughter has so many medicines she needs a pill sorter. I was also on meds when I lived in that house, and they didn't do a damn thing for me but make me sleepy and gain weight. I'm off them now and doing much better. Just need an occasional pop to deal with the anxiety triggered by all this crap. Anyway, I think I'm in a bit of a conundrum because I'm a serious guy and really would want at least somewhat of a serious relationship, but I have all this baggage. I probably just need to start making new friends of both gender and see what happens with any of the women. As these problems in the family progressed, I withdrew from all of my friendships and don't have a lot left. I'm isolated, alone, and worried all the time. I do have the closeness of my parents and sister, but I want more social interactions. There is no limit to the crap going on in my family. Just found out that my wife opened a county protective case on one of my daughters. My daughter had already been receiving support from a county agency within home therapist, but without a formal case. That agency informed me of this new case during my weekly check-in with them. They claimed that my wife just wanted a higher level of service, which would be 24/7 with the case open. The new service would be through another agency, and I have a feeling my wife is getting tired of the current one because they are starting to hold her accountable for her BS. Anyway, the new agency called me today, and I figured out that it was about more than all that. They told me that they would be looking forward to seeing me and checking in on us during my weekend custodial visits with my children. So, my wife just used a dirty trick to get my visits supervised, despite the judge denying that request of hers. It's unbelievable. First, she fought against every hour of visitation when the judge directed our lawyers to help us come up with a visitation schedule, and now she pulls this. I also don't know what justification she used to get this case open. The worker got a little defensive when I asked the question and said, "All I can say is that it is about your daughter's behavioral issues." When people start sentences with that phrase, something is being hidden. Meanwhile, the household seems to be falling apart every time I check in with my scheduled calls. The kids play video games all day, including age-inappropriate ones, which they don't even stop for a few minutes as they talk to me. I have checked in with their teachers and there are severe problems at school. Scores of unexcused absences, disruptive behavior, falling performance. All stuff we were dealing with before I left, largely because my hands were always tied, but now much more frequent and completely over the top. I am so worried about my children. I am having trouble sleeping and concentrating on my work. I feel like I need to get them out of that house, but it's an uphill battle between the false PFA and my need to move out of state to stay employed. Even still, I hope the judge will listen to me and consider the information I will present at the next hearing. My oldest, who's in college, doesn't even want to go back to that house for her breaks anymore, but wants to spend some of them with me. The middle one is in dire need of help, the one with the county case. Does anyone have experience with or knowledge of therapeutic boarding schools or other ways to get her out of this mess? I don't have much money, so it would have to be something aided by insurance or assistance. I am worried that she is going to become a drug addict, runaway type if another couple of years if this goes on. I'm losing my ability to cope with my fears. I am realizing that the dating is way too premature. It was an impulse to want to do that to fill the void of loneliness I'm experiencing, but I realize it would actually be quite selfish at this point. Thanks for the tips for when I am ready. Also, I did start going to the gym again a couple of weeks ago and that is helping a little. The legal stuff with the kids is so much worse than I ever imagined, and I just need to work really hard on that. My wife's outrageous behavior and horrible parenting will catch up with her. It's just a matter of time, if not at the next hearing, probably at another one in the future. I'm just really scared about the damage that continues to build in the meantime. I also fear this will go on for years before it starts to get better. After the custody issues are resolved, I will have to see what kind of relationship I can have with her or anyone else. At this point, I don't know if I'll never speak to her again, become cordial, become friends, or reconcile. I am also really worried that she is becoming mentally ill and will eventually need help herself. There's more than the bad parenting and behavior toward me that makes me think that. Anyway, all of that's not important now. I feel like the very lives of my children are at stake. I'm just sickened and heartbroken. I realize now that the dating idea was not a good one. Also, at the moment I really don't think I will reconcile or really want that. I still hope there is something in her that might change, but I doubt it will ever happen. That's all I mean by that, but I know the chances are slim to none. Unfortunately, my state has no legal separation. I will eventually file for a divorce given the trajectory of events. My lawyer advised me not to do it too quickly on the heels of the PFA and custody case, as it would look a bit angry and vengeful. The custody case will need to get cleared up in the divorce anyway, so he recommended just working on that for now. It's my priority anyway. There is also a 2-year period to contest a divorce in my state. I won't be surprised if she actually uses that to string this out longer. She doesn't have a full-time job and is showing no movement towards getting one. She has terribly paying contract work that she does from home, and she teaches a few classes a week outside the home. Both activities cause more chaos and problems than they solve and are way past the point of diminishing returns. At this point, I don't even really care about the financial issues so much for my own comfort. I can live with my parents as I am now, or in a cheap rented room as I will when I start my new job. I just want to bring her to reality, both with the custody and the finances once the divorce goes forward. It's so overdue, but it will happen at least with the custody for sure. With the finances, you never know, her parents might step in and continue the enabling, or perhaps she can latch on to another guy. Unfortunately, the PFA stipulates that I must maintain the residence despite me not living there. As far as the credit cards go, I tried to start calling to cancel them, but some had her as the primary holder and wouldn't allow it, so it's pointless. I don't think she could open more with her low income, thankfully. Right now, it's walking a tightrope. If I assert my right to live in a better apartment, I know the credit card balances will just go up faster and we'll get closer to bankruptcy. There is also the spiteful route I could take. When I mentioned to my lawyer that I had to move out of state to stay employed in my field, he suggested that I not and just go on unemployment or work at a low-wage job to screw her over with the potential child support and alimony. I chose not to. I want to have a productive and meaningful life and not be hanging around in this small town where my reputation is trashed and I have to worry about getting arrested for bumping into her at the grocery store. The false PFA just screws me big time, and it's something I have to accept and cope with. All I feel like I have the power to do right now is expose her on the horrible parenting, provide evidence that the PFA was filed in bad faith, and bide my time with the divorce. Nothing about this is fair. I'm moving 7 hours away so I can pay for the family's lifestyle, while she stays put and does a bit of at-home work that contributes little. I'll be working full-time and driving back to see the kids every couple weeks when there is no reason they even need to be there. I would gladly pay for her to have a separate apartment in my new town, even more than required by law. I just want to see my kids more and break them away from the terrible trajectory they are on. It's breaking my heart. I live in a state with no form of legal separation, which makes things harder. My new job is only slightly higher paying than the one I'm at now, neither of which are tremendously great. I have been a little underemployed for my education level, so it's more likely that my income will go up in the future if anything. So, from that perspective, it might be good to do the divorce now. My field of employment is very specialized and heavily dependent on staying active, PhD scientist in a narrow field, so getting a job closer by just isn't an option unless I give up on my career. That would ruin my future income potential and do too much damage to my dignity to be worth anything I'd save in the divorce settlement. That's the rub of my problem. Divorce, on the first point, I will likely follow. Probably right after the custody is finalized, which should be in about a month. On the second, I simply can't. I am 3 months away from being laid off from my job in an out-of-the-way college town, with no other prospect than 6 months of unemployment insurance followed by something even worse after that. The job 7 hours away is the best closest thing I could find. It sucks, but I can't afford the stay put option. I also think it goes against all the 180 advice I see posted on this site. My wife, my children, and her family need to see me as a success and not some beaten-down loser. And I need that too, more importantly. My career allows me to travel, meet people, and keep my mind stimulated in many ways. So, while the staying put option would hurt my wife more than what I'm doing, the only real accomplishment would be spite, because I'd suffer disproportionately even more in the long run. She'll likely wind up dependent on her parents whatever I do, but if I live well and have a meaningful life, I'll get better sooner. In my view, the new job is pretty much the only hopeful thing going on in my life. Everything with this situation is difficult and full of drama. As I mentioned before, my wife opened a CPS case on my daughter, with me wondering if it was to get my visits supervised. I met with them today. They were friendly and I cooperated. They assured me that there were no allegations against me and that my wife just wanted the extra help from the social workers. However, the social worker also did say that I'd be expected to have them come along for a portion of my weekend visits, which are now only a few hours every other Saturday and Sunday thanks to my wife's hardball negotiations. Don't know whether or not to take this as a manipulation by my wife or to accept the explanation at face value. The caseworker also brought up an interesting point about my PFA. She was wondering why it couldn't be modified to allow communication through email only about the kids. It's making me wonder if my lawyer negotiated it the way he did to drive up the need for all the expensive communication through him. I wasn't even allowed to be in the room when that deal was made and felt like I had no choice. At the time, the only issue he brought up was the need to make sure the order stayed as a temporary one so that there was no finding of fault, but I wonder if some limited communication could have been worked in. Maybe it's something I should bring up now. The legal fees have been ridiculous just from trying to do basic co-parenting communication, collect tax documents, etc. I can't imagine what the divorce will cost under these circumstances, as there is a lot to go disentangle from 20 years of marriage. Speaking of paperwork, I asked my wife for copies of documents I needed to do some administrative stuff. Interestingly, she gave me photocopies of the kids' birth certificates, but the original marriage certificate. I'm wondering if there is a subtle message there, as if she's saying she doesn't want it and it means nothing to her anymore. I don't know, is it required for the divorce filing? Maybe she's trying to put that responsibility on me instead of taking it on herself. I'm probably reading way too much into things, but that tends to happen when you're living behind the wall of a restraining order. Of course, she forgot a couple of the things I asked for, so there will be the need for more expensive emails to the lawyers. I'm getting so sick of this. I agree that the money and potential bankruptcy are the least of my concerns. The thing is, this false protective order gives her victory in every way possible, including most importantly the perception battle. I can now be fully blamed for the breakup of the marriage when family and friends learn about it. I can also be blamed for all the related difficulties, the kids' behavioral problems, the financial troubles, etc. Even my own family, while supportive, buys into the crap at some level, saying things like, maybe it's for the best you can't speak to each other now, etc. No, it's not. We can't even decide whether our kids will do an extracurricular activity without letters going back and forth between lawyers. My kids are treated to big dramatic scenes where they are transferred between us at a gas station where my mother-in-law comes separately to keep an eye on things. Meanwhile, my 9-year-old asks when I can come to house and play her favorite video game with her. I just sit in the shadows, afraid to talk to people I was close to, doubting anyone will believe me about what happened. Even if they might, it's a story that requires a good couple of hours to go through and explain. I'm too emotionally drained to keep having those conversations. I think I will do better when I start my job out of state in April. I'll be able to meet some new people and get to forge some relationships that aren't tainted by this toxic mess. No one has mentioned it to me that it would actually look better with regards to the PFA, regarding looking like I'm moving on. I think my full compliance and leaving town also helps. I don't even look in her direction when we do our custodial exchanges at the gas station. I understand that now that all this PFA crap has happened, it is best to have no contact. I guess my last post was just a lament about how unfair it all is and what the psychological and social damage to me has been. I wouldn't go back to anything beyond discussing basic parenting and financial issues over email if it were dropped. Sadly, you are right, she can't be trusted anymore. I feel as if I am already divorced in a sense because that bond is completely shattered and I don't see how it can be repaired. An alcoholic can go to AA, a cheater can ask forgiveness and go no contact with their lover, but what could my wife even do to regain trust if she wanted to? I also wonder how she can be so blind to the cruelty of this. Does she actually believe that I am an abuser? Did the people in the local domestic violence office talk her into that mindset? Or is she just a manipulative psychopath who doesn't think at all about my perspective and feelings? When we were in counseling, more than one therapist made it clear to us that while I was yelling too much to cope with living in constant frustration, I was not abusive. Anger and abuse are not the same thing. I did not demean and try to control people in the family with anger. I did not threaten people. I was slowly being driven crazy from dealing with constant irrationality and disrespect for my parental authority. Near the end, I wasn't even yelling in frustration anymore, I was mostly crying. I've recently read about gaslighting, and that really seems to describe what happened to me. So, I really don't know going forward what kind of relationship I can have with my wife. As parents of the same children, we will by definition have to have some sort of one. Will we ever be able to communicate at all? Will we be able to be friendly exes someday? Like I said, right now I can't even look in her direction without feeling ill, and a decent amount of time, 3 months, has passed. With time and clarity, my hatred and disgust are growing, not subsiding. I have come up with a plan that I'd like to air out here. All the advice I'm getting here indicates that I should file a divorce ASAP. I do want one now, but am afraid to get the ball rolling. Mostly because my wife has exhibited horrible high conflict tendencies, resulting in high legal fees just for the PFA and custody, which aren't even done yet. God only knows what a divorce could ring up to be. I also feel bad because my parents are paying for it and will probably have to delay their retirement as a result. There are also the travel costs and time off work from the new job if I need to attend hearings. At the same time, the wife gets unlimited access to her free domestic violence attorney. So, here's the thought. I'm moving out of state and can file there after 1 year of residency. Even if my wife were to file in her state, I could block the divorce for up to 2 years there. So, I'm thinking that I should just wait it out and, if necessary, manipulate things to get the filing in my new state. That way she'll have to put up with all of the out-of-state conveniences, perhaps without a free lawyer. The PFA should also be over and expunged by then, so I could possibly go before a new judge without all of that baggage. I'd also love to deny all of the lawyers and judges currently making all of this money off of my paying some of the spoils they think they're entitled to. The only downside is the wait, but honestly, I don't think I can emotionally deal with the pressures of a high-conflict divorce now anyway. I'm also thinking of wiping my butt with our marriage certificate and mailing it to her, but I guess that would be a violation of the PFA. The state we are in has no-fault divorce only by mutual consent for 2 years after separation. So, either of us could file, but the other could block it just by not responding. My new state will allow me to file after 1-year residency. There are also advantages in the new state regarding alimony that would benefit me. So, I'm really thinking now that I'll wait it out for the new state. She is already using high-conflict tactics with her free domestic violence attorney that have maximized my legal fees and travel expenses, coming from my aging parents. It will be a long wait, but it will be glorious to see her have to deal with the out-of-state filing. There will be no free lawyer, she'll have to travel for court appearances, and there might be no alimony. She'll have a complete meltdown. It will be well worth waiting and paying her bills in the meantime. I also suspect the time and cost wouldn't really be any less if I were to file in her state now and she allowed it to proceed. She'd argue over every little detail of the settlement and force me to come back for scores of court appearances. Her attitude might be different if the shoe was on the other foot. She dictated the terms of the separation, but it looks like I can dictate the playing field for the divorce if I'm patient. There could be no greater revenge on a control freak like her. Finding out that I can manipulate the potential divorce to be in my new state is a godsend that I will take full advantage of. I won't have to be nasty about it or hire an aggressive attorney or anything like that. I'll just calmly proceed with my life and my legal strategy. Since her PFA filing, everything has been on her terms so far, but the new state changes everything. It's not so much about revenge and spite as it is empowering myself in this situation. She is still dangerously unhinged, and this can help me put the brakes on her destructive spiral. As far as the kids go, that is the troubling part. I'm trying to hope that they will do well with the new situation, but I doubt they will. That is drama I can't really avoid, and it could all blow up further even before a divorce is finalized. I think the biggest roll of the dice with the out-of-state filing concerns my wife's attorney situation. Having to travel for court appearances and losing her free lawyer might bring her to reality and reduce her litigiousness about everything. However, she might use joint funds, credit to pay for her legal case rather than ask her parents for help as I have. It still might be worth it to get out of the kangaroo court I'm in now. The alimony differences in the states are potentially quite significant. In her state, she can claim child custody, support during my grad school, and possibly even abuse as grounds for alimony. The first two factors don't apply in the new state, and the abuse charge will be difficult to use if the PFA is expunged by then. Your comment about new phony charges being brought up is also well taken. I do worry that might happen if she starts to lose on other fronts. I'm strictly following the PFA and documenting everything. Thinking rationally and strategically is difficult with all I've been through, but I'm getting there. It's not in my nature to think and act like I'm at war, but I'm realizing I have to. Marriage is really the opposite of that, and I was completely committed to it. It's hard to break that mindset. What I'm thinking now is more or less a classic rope-a-dope strategy. She's firing everything she can at me now in full fury, but I'm laying back and exposing her weaknesses as she overextends her case. I'll strike back hard and decisively when the time comes. Fighting back with equal or greater fury now would just prove her points about my anger problem, mental issues, etc. Just standing up for myself with dignity is what's best in the short term. I need to get myself attuned to assessing the right time to strike back and what tactics to use. It's not all about money and revenge at this point. It's about vindication and accountability. Her insertion of the abuse card into this makes it so. Her mishandling of the children underscores this even more. Today was the first day in 4 months I did not cry. It was the first time in about 3 years I did not feel anxious. It is unbelievable. I think the time of no contact has finally settled into emotional clarity. With the distance, I also think I know what is wrong with my spouse, which is giving me a sense of power and relief. The answer to my what the hell happened question seems like it is finally being revealed to me after much research and reflection. She is a covert narcissist, whose false projection is that of a dedicated, loving, and perfect parent. My therapist confirmed that I am likely correct about this. All of the crazy arguments we had about parenting differences were not coming from a place of mutual sincere concern about the children. They were happening because she was insisting on doing things that were for her own emotional gratification rather than teaching discipline, instilling values, correcting misguided behaviors, providing for normal emotional development, or any other legitimate needs of the children. Children learn to be highly manipulative under such conditions, and all hell breaks loose. Marriage therapists and others had told us that there was a difference in parenting philosophies and that we needed to learn to get together and work on the same page. Now I know better. Normal people settle differences with rational discourse and can compromise. That never happened for us at all. The worst thing about a person like this is that they can fool people for years and years, as she did with me. The protective order was just narcissistic discard in its truest form. She needed to do it to protect her image as the virtuous and loving parent by painting me in the worst light possible. Her complete lack of empathy for all involved is further telling, leaving the kids at home to watch me be evicted by the sheriff. She is a sick person, and now I really know and understand what the sickness is and how to rise above it. Other people know about it too. I think that one of our daughter's therapists has caught on to my wife's true nature, at least enough to blow her cover. The county workers and the therapists are all communicating and they are seeing the problems. Little by little more friends and acquaintances are showing support for me. She's not winning the battle to rewrite my history that she started with the protective order. My children still love me, many people still respect me, and most importantly I now have regained my self-respect. What a difference that makes. I feel like the 180 everyone talks about just magically happened in the span of about 24 hours. The no-contact protective order may actually turn out to be the best gift my wife ever gave me. My sanity is back. I thought I was getting over it, but I was wrong. Crazy happened again. It always does in this family, and I always feel responsible. Just before a week-long visit with my children, I hear from the social workers. My daughter is in deeper trouble. She is getting into seriously bad stuff on the internet. She ran out of the house and the police had to track her down. Same stuff as before I left, but worse. The daughter now has another serious county services report on her. It's all proving that I'm right about everything, but it doesn't make me feel good. Concerns for the children always rope me back into everything with my wife emotionally. I could let it all go if it wasn't for them. They are here with me now and I feel a little better, but they will have to go back to that hellhole next week. I know things are probably progressing toward me getting custody and my wife being exposed as the narcissistic sociopath that she is, but that is going to take time. Divorcing her will take time and money, and getting those kids will too. It will also take tremendous emotional energy. Every week I see new and different twists on the dysfunction. Every week I have to see her to transfer custody. I get acute physical anxiety symptoms, not just a racing heartbeat, but intense sore throats, coughing, headaches, and skin rashes. I did have many moments when I confronted her and stood up for myself, but this was met not with respect, but with cowardly acts of aggression on her part, spurious calls to police, an attempt to have me put in a psychiatric hospital, and eventually the restraining order. This was a problem I could do nothing to solve or prevent. She is pathological. It's as simple as that. Chaos and emotional destruction follow her at every turn. I just didn't recognize it until it was too late. The crazy stuff started when the youngest was 2 years old and had been progressing in the 8 years since, until it really exploded in the last year. I'm living with the constant fear that my daughter will turn up missing or dead because she also can't take living in that house but has no choice. That is the crux of my pain. No amount of self-empowerment or improvement can change that. Still terrified of my wife and the state of my children, but there have been some interesting revelation and interactions this week while I had my children. Not sure what to make of them. Given the whole protective order situation, everything was heard secondhand through my mother, but I assume it was all meant to be heard by me. I'm still not hopeful for a reconciliation, but I'm trying to figure out what is going through her head to anticipate the future crazy crap that will be hurled my way. Among the things I heard: 1. She can't sleep at night. She's up until 5 every night or taking sleep medication. She was like this even the past week with the kids out of the house and having a break from the stress. 2. She asked why I never got an apartment near the house after the separation. I'm now with my parents hours away, working remotely. Why would I go to all that hassle to do that for 4 months before my new job starts when I couldn't see my children anyway because of the protective order? 3. She offered to send stuff from the house to me for my move to my new job. My mother explained that I will have a furnished place and didn't need anything. My wife offered to send towels. Unbelievable. She filed a restraining order, triggered thousands of dollars of legal expenses, and now she offers to generously send me off to my new life with old towels. 4. She mentioned that she thinks she might have problems and is considering going to seek therapy. 5. She's still sticking to a lot of crazy talk and thinking about the parenting problem. So definitely there is much to be wary of. What I'm wondering is what her motivation might be. Is she mostly scared to death about the stuff going on with my daughter and the possibility that she might lose her? Is she just trying to suck my mother into her narcissistic web by appearing nice and caring? Is it possible that there is some crack in the wall with me and that there are regrets? I'm committed to standing steadfast and keeping my boundaries. I'm sticking to 100% no contact. I won't even pass her any indirect messages through third parties about my feelings about our relationship or how I'm doing emotionally. I simply won't do it while under the duress of the protective order. It was filed as a manipulative power play, and I refuse to even acknowledge her existence while it is in place. I'm only addressing the very basic parenting and financial issues. I also don't want any crap from the house unless there is a divorce settlement, after which I will be able to afford an apartment large enough to have a few things. Had another custody hearing today. My weekend visits were up from 4 hours to 8 hours, which I guess is good, but the judge seemed to have an over-excessive need for it to be a compromise. I wanted 10 hours, and my wife wanted 6. It made no difference to the court that the family is completely falling apart otherwise, with my daughter having failed academic marks, running away from home, and a fresh size reports. They are still hung up on resolving the issue of whether or not I, the big bad abuser, who had the PFA filed on him, is worthy of time with my kids. It's completely pathetic. My daughter will have to wind up in serious trouble before anything is done about her situation. Yet the system lives in fear that maybe there is an outside chance that I will be that abuser that X someone. I am so disgusted. Granted, I didn't ask for primary custody because of my new job situation. But I think I will once I get settled in. My wife is ruining my children. I truly believe things will get worse in the home and that eventually there will be no other option for me to take custody. It's just horrible to see this happening to my kids and have no other recourse. I will have to let my wife bottom out and pick up the pieces. It's coming. This is the most painful thing I've ever had to witness. I also am believing more and more that she doesn't want a divorce. I really think she wants to use this legal process to prove to me that her messed up way of conducting family affairs is how it needs to go down. There have been a lot of conciliatory gestures behind the scenes via my mother that seem to contradict the hardball legal crap. In her twisted mind, I think she feels like she is rescuing the family and trying to get us all psychologically well, although it's clear to me who the nut job is. My comment, Part 2 ending will come in the afternoon where we will see the real side of this divorce. Subscribe and I will see you in the updated ending.